why do you think were possibly thrown out because of these issues you outlined?
We don't have all the data yet. I mean, it's still, just yesterday, boards were required to certify their provisional ballot numbers. We have the data from 2008 that we had about 200,000 provisional ballots cast. 1 in 10 of those was rejected. We believe that there was a little bit higher number of provisional ballots statewide in 2012. And, as we've outlined, we're very concerned that our rejection rate is still way too high.
In the 2 races that we're looking more closely at the numbers, I can tell you that in House District 98 in Tuscarawas County, there were 114 provisional ballots that were rejected and not counted. And in the district up in Cuyahoga County, approximately 270. So, there are real numbers that have the potential to affect the outcome of elections, and people's voices should be heard in this process.
One of the things that was new this year is the Secretary of State sent out the absentee ballot application form to everyone, every registered voter in Ohio. And we heard from voters throughout the time that they sent their thing back, not realizing that meant they were supposed to vote by mail. Some of them actually said they weren't going to vote that way, they were going to show up polls and pass provisional ballots. Did you see any problems, evidence of problems associated with people who might have been confused by the absentee ballot, the whole situation?
One of the things that we're seeing is that it has been difficult to get information about the specific ballots. The Secretary has issued a directive to boards not to release that specific information about provisional voters or absentees until this whole process is through the recount period. So we do believe that there are a number of absentee ballots that also were not counted across the state as well, but we don't have the specific numbers on those particular ballots at this time. If someone requested an absentee ballot and didn't receive it in time or chose to come in and vote, I believe that they would have been instructed to vote provisionally, and if they did not return their absentee ballot as well, and absent any other error, their ballot should have been counted. But again, there are questions about the specific requirements that are in excess of the legal requirements, like having to put the information twice on the envelope that could have caused some of them to be rejected. But we're gonna have to continue digging in to get that specific information.
What is the public records issue you address?
Okay, so in the past, the envelopes and the information on the envelopes was something that people could see, that was considered a public record. It is now, there was an opinion from the Attorney General that because the envelopes contain personal information, like potentially part of the voter's social security number, that those envelopes are not a public record. We believe, however, that other documents that were created, lists of the names and the reasons for rejection of ballots, that those documents that are not the envelopes themselves, we believe that those should be public records, and there's some back and forth discussion going on about whether we can get that information to be able to dig in more fully on the specifics of reasons that ballots were rejected.
My understanding the current situation was that they were public records, but you couldn't see them until after the recount period. Is that?
I think that is, I'm not sure the answer to that, and could get back to you on that. I will say, it's very hard for us to determine, whether, what the problems are and how to resolve these disputes without having access to the information. And boards and, following the guidance of the Secretary have not been very forthcoming, and that is, one of the big problems that we're facing.
Maybe we should ask it this way: what information do you think should be public about provisional voters?
I think that the envelope should be public. Voter registration data is public. A person's voter registration form and voter registration information is public. There's no additional information that's on a provisional ballot envelope, so it's not clear to me why the information on that envelope should be shielded.
And part of the reason why that information is important is that a voter may not realize that they're at risk of not having their vote counted. And the period of time in which they can cure any defects on the envelope, if they only sign in one place and not in both places, there's a very limited period of time in which they can cure those defects, even if it's something that they're allowed to fix. And if they aren't aware that this problem exists, they're losing that opportunity.
Expect to be legal action in the 98 or 7th district on some of the provisional ballots that have been thrown out, or is that something that will happen after?
There are a couple things happening in both of those races. An automatic recount has been triggered, so that process is underway, and we are analyzing the numbers and the reasons for ballots being rejected. So we'll be sorting that out and making a decision shortly. We're definitely exploring all of our options.
And I'd like to stress too that there is still time for Secretary of State Houston to act. I sent him a letter notifying him of the federal law issue, one of the federal law issues, and got no response. That was sent over a week ago. Unhappy to not be responded to by the Secretary of State, but there is still time for him to act and to issue a directive and to order Ohio to follow federal law and to ensure that these ballots aren't needlessly rejected.